Alright, so in this video I'm going to talk about a property that I bought in Windsor, Ontario, sight unseen. 3 years ago to this day, I have still not set foot in Windsor, Ontario. Actually, I've never even been to Ontario. If you live in an expensive city like I do, like Vancouver or Toronto, it could be very tempting to look elsewhere, somewhere out of province, and in a lot of cases, I actually would advise it. This has been the most successful real estate transaction of my short-lived real estate investing career. So stay tuned as I tell you all about it. I'm that Agent Kelly, realtor here in Abbotsford, British Columbia. I basically cover everywhere in the Fraser Valley, Surrey, Langley. I do a lot of business in Maple Ridge and sometimes Chilliwack, but mostly Abbotsford. Basically on this channel that I cover investing in real estate all across Canada, what's happening in my local markets, investing as a whole, mindset, and other stuff like that. So if you get any value or entertainment from this video, all I ask is that you like this video and subscribe. Let's get into it. All right, so back in 2019, I was looking to buy a rental property. I had just purchased 2 years prior my primary residence, which is a condo in Abbotsford, and I had saved up 20 grand. I wanted to try to get into a rental property. It was always one of my goals. Like even when I was young, a teenager, I just for some reason knew that I eventually wanted to own real estate. I guess I had heard my parents talking about rental property or something like that, but I just knew it was the way to go. However, at that time, even with 20 grand, even if I had partnered with somebody, I wasn't going to be able to buy anything out here where I live. I could have bought maybe like a 1-bedroom apartment in Chilliwack, but it would have been an older 1-bed apartment. And even then, I think those were cash flow negative, about $250 a month for an older 1-bed apartment in Chilliwack. So that forced me to start looking elsewhere. After watching many YouTube videos and scouring the forums section on biggerpockets.com, which by the way, if you don't know what that is, I would highly recommend you guys check it out. They've also got a podcast that's very awesome. I ended up stumbling across Windsor, Ontario. Somebody in the forums had mentioned it, so I started looking into Windsor, Ontario. At that time, Windsor had a pretty bad name because back in 2008, along with the housing industry, the auto industry was also going belly up. Windsor's local economy relied heavily on the Ford plant that they had situated within the city. So after the 2008 crash, Windsor had one of the highest vacancy rates in the country. It was 16%, might have even been the highest, aside from some small towns in Alberta and stuff like that, but it was definitely one of the highest vacancy rates in the country. However, what I had found was that there was actually a ton of economic growth coming to Windsor. They had just spent $37 million remodeling one of their malls. They were doing this massive $50 million university extension, which a lot of tech students were going to, and I think they were converting an older building in the downtown core to a second campus to that university in Windsor. They were building a bridge from Windsor to Detroit, which was going to employ over 1,000 people, all making $80,000 a year or more, which that is a lot of people making good money for a city like Windsor, which has a relatively small population. And even Detroit at that time wasn't doing that bad. Historically, Detroit is not an economic powerhouse, so to speak, but at that time they were doing pretty good, and Quicken Loans had just relocated to Detroit. So, I weighed the risks and I found that hey man, if I buy a house here, there were homes under $200,000 in Windsor. My mortgage is going to be $500 to $600, $700. Even if this house sits vacant and I can't even find somebody to rent it, it's still going to cost me less than a car payment to keep this house. And I'm at least getting some of that money back in principal pay down. So when I started looking, as I was saying, there were a lot of homes under $200,000 that you could buy. They weren't the best. They were older homes. My home was built in 1908, but comparative to what I had out here in Vancouver and its suburbs, where you can't even buy a house in an hour away from downtown for 800 grand or less, that was extremely cheap, and the rents were very high comparatively. So after writing a bunch of offers, the market was actually pretty hot at that time, so I lost out on a few offers. We found one house that was listed for 160 grand. We got it locked up for $150K. It was a 2-bed, 1-bath. I think the lot was 6,500 square feet or 7,000 square feet or something like that. And at that time, I had sent the property to my property manager before I wrote the offer. She said it'll rent for $1,300 a month. I ran the numbers and I would be cash flow positive about $400 a month. My mortgage is $500. And here's the crazy thing. At the top of the 2021 market, 3 years later, that house was worth, I had reached out to my realtor out there and he said that there were comps, comparable properties in that same area, same neighborhood, one on the same street that had sold for $550,000. So I'm gonna say conservatively, I probably could have got $500,000 for that property at the top of the 2021 market. Now today, probably worth $380,000. However, the tenant that I had ended up saving up enough money. She bought a place. The new tenant we put in there is paying $1,600 a month. So I'm actually cash flow positive $700 a month. Only put down $30,000 for a property that has appreciated, let's just say conservatively $380,000 valuation today, $230,000, and cash flows me $700 a month on a $30,000 investment. So let's break that down. After 3 years, I have about $18,000 in my bank account. That is purely cash flow that I have received from this property. After all expenses, I've done barely any repairs on this thing, never hear from my property manager. I have $18,000 in excess cash flow, $230,000 equity for a total gain of $248,000. If I divide, well, my down payment was $30,000, but I had to put about $6,000 into it. Well, actually, I had to put about $35,000 into it, but with lawyer fees and all that stuff is about $36,000. $248,000 divided by $36,000, it's a 688% return. Now, keep in mind, I actually did end up buying this house with a buddy, so it's still a 688% return, but I only had $19,000 invested or $18,000 invested instead of the 36. Today, I'm just holding that property. Like I said, cash flows me about $700 a month. I'm gonna keep that cash flow in that account until it's about $20,000. Once I hit about $20,000 in my account, then I'll start actually spending that cash flow to supplement my lifestyle. I keep that there as a reserve because the property is old. If I have to change the roof or do anything like that, I'll already have $20,000 there ready to go. And I have no plans in selling it. I'm just holding on to it. My mortgage is about $112,000. So if anything did go catastrophically wrong, I could literally just pay off the mortgage and own it outright if I had to. So that's basically just a rundown on my most successful real estate transaction I've ever had. Still can't believe it went this well to this day. I will in the future make a video about how you can do this too, how you'll be able to buy a property out of province, sight unseen, and rent it out for positive cash flow. So stay tuned to that. All I ask, like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Again, I'm that Agent Kelly with Stonehaus Realty, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace.